never seen anything like that. I mean, I've seen jiu-jitsu, but those guys are amazing.
A great honor to have the Machado brothers.
Machado.
It's Carlos Machado.
All right, guys, Carlos Machado here with another episode of Coffee Time with Carlos Machado. I have somebody who I consider a dear friend, despite the fact I don't see him as often as I'd like. Okay, but he's like I would say a treasure in the scene of Texas martial arts and America in itself. When I first came to Dallas in the mid-90s, I got to meet him and some of his awesome training partners and students. We're going to talk about that. Guy Mezger doesn't need introduction. Like I said, his career as an MMA fighter, Pride, UFC, his background in wrestling, kickboxing, he has had it all. And I'll let him talk about what he did. But besides that, he's a man that has rediscovered himself in different ways. He, through his experiences and needs throughout his career, had to take care of some injuries. And he became completely dedicated to the healing arts as a naturopathic, I would say.
Yeah, naturopathic and PhD.
Yeah.
I'm a metabolic specialist.
Yeah, holistic medicine. And for me, this is so intriguing because I love the martial arts when we talk about it, but I love the wellness. And I think both have to go together. And Guy, we're going to talk a lot more about you now.
The interesting thing, I was a little note on the fact that you do this. The first martial artists who were not military-based martial artists, because that's really where martial arts came from, was from the military, right?
Yeah.
But the first ones who were not military-based were that they recorded were Chinese, and they were all doctors. Wow. They were Chinese doctors, and it was that they studied the body,
yep,
and the weaknesses and the pros and all that kind of stuff, and so the very first recorded non-military martial artists were doctors. So it's like I tell people, the yin and yang. People go, "Why'd you become a doctor?" I said, "Well, I spent the first half of my life breaking people. The second half, I'm putting them back together." So
that's awesome. All right, so let's talk about. I'd like you, and sometimes I go different orders, Guy.
Yeah, no worries.
To the beginning, then I kind of fast forward. So we're gonna go there.
Well, don't worry about it. I'm a stream of conscious thinker,
yeah,
anyways.
Yeah. so basically, here, when I met you, it was right on the cusp of the Lion's Den being established. I think it was just a recent, when you had Shamrock.
Well, they established the Lion's Den 93.
93, so a couple of years before I came.
Yeah, a couple of years before, and then I met you in 95.
Yeah, that's great.
But Dallas, the Lion's Den guys in Dallas at that time was just me, Alex, and Trey.
Wow.
Yeah, so there wasn't. We eventually grew our team.
Yeah.
What we've referred to as Lions Den Dallas team.
Let me go back in time now, and if you don't mind, give me a refresh on your story. Because I know you did wrestling first. Is that what you first started? Wrestling?
Yeah, I started as a wrestler.
Went all the way through high school?
High school and college. I wrestled 2 years in college. I ended up getting kicked out of college. I had some maturity issues, and
I got you.
But I had a pretty decent wrestling career. I was a state champion wrestler in high school. I was a high school All-American. I was pretty successful college when I was wrestling. At the same time, like I started doing karate also in high school.
Wow.
And I was good at that too. I mean, I was state national world karate champion from like age 14 to 20 as an amateur.
How did that transition to kickboxing?
That was just the next level up.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so my story, I could probably draw this out. This, like I said, you said we usually do about an hour and a half. The problem with me is shutting up. So you might have to shut me up in about 2 hours after this. But I'll give you the kind of the rendition how I became a pro fighter, because it wasn't like I had any kind of like, huge, driving force that said, this is what I want to do. I believe it or not, I really want to be more of a doctor. And I enjoy, I never really enjoyed hurting people. Still, I never, ever, even people who had to come and I might get some satisfaction out of it, but I don't get pleasure out of it. And, but I was good at it for some reason. It was a weird dichotomy. I never enjoyed hurting people, but I was good fighter. Like when I wrestled, and of course you got to understand something. I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, and kids today, man, I mean, they look at each other cross, and they get the school's going to kick them out for mean looks. And in our school, literally the PE teacher, who's usually the football coach or basketball coach, would take you in the gym, put boxing gloves on you, and you'd fight it out. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you go to jail for today. And so it was a much different community back then, And so I moved every 2 years. So every 2 years I was a new kid, and anybody who's had to miss pleasure of having to do that means you have pecking order every 2 years. And the problem with me is that I was big for my age, but small for my grade, because my dad put me in school like a year, 2 years before. Like I was in college at 17, when everybody else was 18 and 19. And, so I wasn't a big kid for my grade. And, and you have this pecking order, and I knew, like, first day of kindergarten, we had a fight. They had forced busing back then, and so I'm like, man, I got to learn how to do something on this, because having my butt handed to me isn't fun. So I got into wrestling, and I was good at it, and successful. And then of course Chuck Norris motivated a lot of people to get into karate, and he had a movie that the acting wasn't so great, but I thought was a great movie. It was a movie called Octagon, and it actually kind of started the ninja craze that hit the 80s. But it was a great movie, very great motivator. And so I said, I want to do karate too. And I was very fortunate that my mom's boss, a guy named Doc Parker, Dr. Stephen Parker, he was into karate, and he just happened to go to a school. And I was very fortunate, because the school I walked into that he introduced me to had all these world champions. They were all like world champion karate fighters and world champion kickboxers, and I didn't know any better. I just thought I thought all karate guys were like that. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my gosh, what, because I was pretty cocky. But by the time I was, 14, 15 years old, I was pretty cocky, because I hadn't lost a fight in a long time. And, and then I thought, these guys can't be that good. Then I saw these guys do their stuff. I'm like, oh, well, good thing I didn't get smart with one of these guys. And so I was very fortunate, because then, because I grew up in a karate school that was like old school karate, very tough guys, guys like Billy Jackson, Ray McCallum, who are kind of fallen by the wayside. But in the 80s, they were on the magazines back in the 80s and the late 70s and 80s and stuff like that. They were the people, they were, I guess, the UFC fighters of today, so to speak, the notoriety. And, and I got into it. So when I turned, I was a really good amateur, and I ended up getting in a lot of trouble with just one mistake after another mistake after another mistake. I tell people all the time, you got to be careful about, like, my son. He's actually really, my son is 6'5".
You're talking about Logan?
Yeah, he's 6'5".
6'5".
Yeah, he's 230 pounds, and he's a beast. I mean, he can kickbox, he can do jiu-jitsu, he can wrestle. I mean, he's a beast. And I was this guy said, listen, you got to be careful, because like when I was in college, my freshman year, I got in trouble with this one fraternity. And so every time I'd go out, I'd have these fraternity rats just giving me grief. And literally I was in fights all the time. And this one guy who wasn't even reason that I started the fights with it like this, for some reason had a problem with me, and he would never fight, but he would be on the payphone calling his fraternity sisters to come, get me. And if I didn't leave the club or the restaurant or whatever it is, there'd be a fight. And so one day I will admit I had a little bit too much to drink, and I was on a date, which was few and far between back then. And it's like, wow, she really likes me. I'm having a great time. And in walks this guy, and I was like, not tonight. And I walked up to him and I punched him. And the problem was he couldn't take a shot, and he was in a coma for 3 days.
Ooh.
And, and here's the crazy thing. You know what his dad did for a living? He was a federal prosecutor. Mm. So needless to say, my life wasn't in a good place for a while. So that was when that was Texas Tech actually asked me not to come back. They canceled my scholarship and asked me not to come back, and for good reason. Everything turned out all right. The kids is all right, and it's a long story. But that was kind of this start of a downhill slant in my life for a while. Like I always tell people, from age 17 to 20. I was like a bad Miami Vice rerun. I got shot. I got stabbed on 3 separate occasions. I got in trouble with the law, like serious trouble with the law because of that. And I just wasn't in a good place. And about the only thing that was going good for me was my martial art practice. You know what I mean? I was still, able to win and, do the stuff. I was still like, one of the top karate fighters in, the US and I didn't even really try that hard, to be honest. And then this opportunity came to fight in this thing called the Full Contact Karate, Full Contact Karate Championship, I believe. And it was a remake of the Japanese bare knuckle karate. And I never fought in those rules before, but fighting's fighting to me. I can figure it out. You just tell me what the rules are, I'll figure it out. And to be honest, they paid you $500 a fight. It was a 16-man tournament, and so you got to, so if you won the entire thing, you got $500 each win, and then if you won the tournament, you got an extra $1,000, and that was like more money I've never seen ever, in fighting. Karate tournaments in Texas were like paying like $200 or something like that. That was a good one. $50 was the average, right? It was like nothing, and so I said, I'm going to try to do this, and so I had my family sit down with my family. I'm very close to my family. It's just my mother and my brothers, and so we're very, very tight. And
how many siblings you got, if you don't mind me asking?
I have 3 brothers, and then I have my father has had 2 daughters. I have 2 half sisters.
Okay.
One of them actually moved here, and they're awesome. I love them to death. They're amazing. I have an amazing family. They put up with me, and
but keep going.
I was a handful. And anyway, so the fight business. So I sat down. I was like, I had this big family meeting, and everyone's wondering why I'm calling a family meeting, because I'm the one who always tried to dodge the family meetings, because usually it was, somehow like about how I have to straighten up. And I told him, I was like, and you got to understand my family. Everyone in my family is super smart. Super smart. Every single one of them. My mother actually was a member of Mensa, which is a group of people with IQs higher than 40. But all my brothers have invitations to join it.
Wow.
I'd never had. So that just kind of shows you my.
Were you in the order? Were you in the order?
I'm the middle child.
Middle child.
I'm the middle child.
The troubled one.
Yes. I was the troubled youth. And it was funny because my mom would always describe John and Ken, and Marshall, they're on National Honor Roll Society. And Guy, he is very athletic. And
yeah. So just tried to kind of.
Yeah. She's always, yeah. It's like this. So here my family is very smart people, very and tremendously gifted athletes too, every single one of them. And I thought for sure I was going to get some kickback. I thought for sure they're going to be like, Guy, this is crazy. You don't need to do this. Not a single person said anything. They're all like, that might actually be a good decision for you. Mm. So when professional fighting looks like a good decision, you're in a pretty crappy place in life, just so you know. But it was a good decision for me, because it brought back the discipline that I needed in life. When I'm focused on something, I'm extremely disciplined on it. When I'm not, I'm your typical ADD child, you know what I mean? And even now, I'm 58 years old and I'm still that way. And so it was good for me.
So they all attended the event, I assume?
I'm sorry?
They all attended the bare knuckle.
No, it was actually they saw the one they did in Texas, but they were.
But tell me about that one, the 16-man tournament.
Yeah, I fought. Let's see, how many did I fight in those? I had 18 total. Oh, no, I had 19 fights. Actually, what happened was I ended up going to Japan. I won the World Full Contact Karate Championship over there when there was only like 8 or 9 non-Japanese guys to win it. I was one of them. Wow. I was like the 9th or something like that, and so I won every one of them, and mainly because, I was obviously a pretty good athlete at fighting, but what they weren't used to was American style karate. What they were used to is Japanese style karate, which is like, there's no side to side movement. There's no lateral movement. There's, very, very little. And and American karate is all about angles and crazy stuff like that.
Footwork.
Yeah. And I hit hard, you know what I mean? And so, when I hit these guys, I put them down, and I was successful. And then I always tell people, it's like most of my fights that I had, I never really got handled that bad. Okay. All right. Like I've been beaten, but never really outclassed, most of the guys that beat me, it was mostly later in life, after I took some shots, and, I'm usually winning the fight and I get caught with a shot, and that happens. You get put down, and that happens. But I fought a Japanese champion who came out of retirement to fight me, and he absolutely whooped my ass, start to finish. That's when the realization came that I'm not quite as, tough, because I was just, crushing through these guys. And, and of course, I was like, 19, 20, I was 20 years old, and, I mean, you met me when I was in my mid 20s. I was not exactly that modest back then. And so, let alone back, when I was younger and just young gun. And I was just, and it was actually a great wake up call for me when I got my ass handed to me, because it put me back to the drawing board. And then what happened, it just didn't take off in America. That type of fighting didn't take off. It's actually very popular in Europe, very popular obviously in Japan, but not real popular in America. And so when that dried up, I started boxing and kickboxing and stuff like that. And then that's where I launched and did kickboxing. I was also a judo player. I was, I'm black belt in judo and stuff like this. I got
I remember you would go to Tamura back.
Yeah. Vince Tamura is a famous judo player. He actually represented the United States. He was a really great man. I mean, a lot of martial arts people, especially like the big time guys, they get a lot more accolades than they really were. That, oh, he's a great. No, he wasn't. He was a good martial artist, but he wasn't like that particularly good of a human being necessarily, right? There's a lot of guys that kind of, because of that, they're kind of their thing. But this was a gentleman who was truly a gentleman, and
on and off the mat,
just a great human being, and just like everything that you want to believe a martial arts man. I mean, he was in his mid 60s. He still got up every morning at 5 o'clock, did his weight routine, did his own routine like this. And he represented the United States in the very first world championships in judo in 1956. He was a American hero. He, his family, which is sad, his family was in internment camps here, which one of the black spots on American society. Well, and then they let him out after World War II. He still went to Korea. He was a Silver Star recipient, which, in order to get a Silver Star, you have to do some pretty amazing stuff. It's not like, hey, you just dragged a guy from on things. You do some pretty crazy stuff to get a Silver Star, and he did. And he was just amazing, man. And he was very supportive of me when I went into MMA, where all the other judo guys weren't. Judo was very much against that whole thing. I'm not sure why, but they were. And he wasn't. And he thought it was amazing, to be honest. And he would literally train me privately on what was going on. Because I originally started training with you in jiu-jitsu, but there was a kind of a political thing with the brothers and everything like that.
I regret that.
Well, you know what? But I understand how that is. I mean, to be honest, it was.
I was like, you have to understand maturity levels. At that time, I didn't have the maturity. Yeah, so I was thinking like, if I'm training somebody who's going to fight somebody that I know of, that's a jiu-jitsu guy, it was kind of like a tribal thing.
Sure. Well,
but man.
Well, the thing is, you guys were
a good time. I have to say, let me interject. Yeah. I had such a good time having you, Alex, and Trey showing up anytime you guys showed up. I have to say though, you guys are scary. Like all my students, like they would look like, oops, guy's here with his two amigos. Like, damn,
Well, very.
But I did enjoy it, because at that time I was rolling all the time.
Yeah.
And you guys are the best rolls.
Well, I know you used to always go, all right, grab my leg, because what do you always want to look at us? Because we all did like we were big into submission wrestling. You know what I mean? Which was like I was fighting for the Pancrase organization back then, which is it's an MMA
wrestling.
Yeah, it's basically a submission wrestling. It's basically MMA, but with but an emphasis on the submission wrestling, because there's no gi or anything, and they're very good at leg locks, because you used to wear a shoe, and if you have a shoe on, you're not getting out of a leg lock. Mm-hmm. Like I tell someone got a shoe, and I'm wrestling you, and you got a shoe, you ain't getting out of my leg lock. Mm-hmm. All right, and and so they are, really good at doing submissions. But I think very few students outside of like your Kennys and your Travis Luters like this, you wouldn't find too many people outside of me, Alex and Trey, that just wouldn't want to just soak up everything that you had to say. I mean, that's really the thing that I think that was, the best part was that there outside of working with Mr. Tamura, which again was somewhat limited in for the MMA thing because of, his background is judo, and, working without the gi was new to him even, and so, he did a great job, but limited. And so there wasn't, we didn't have anybody that could mentor us. Really it was me finding out new things and go, okay, let's do this. Or I'd go out to California, work with Ken. Ken would go, hey, you should try this. And I would take it back, But, when you learn one or two things and you do that for 6 months, yes, you're going to be good at it, but you're ready for new stuff. You're ready for something new because not all techniques are going to work for everybody. Like, not everybody's going to be able to do an arm bar as good as certain people. And so, you might stay away from that. You may be good at doing an ankle lock, but not good at a heel hook, whatever. Right. And if you're only learning heel hooks, but you're not good at them, well, then, it's things. And you taught, again, the one thing I will safely say that you did is you created the best, jiu-jitsu black belts in the Dallas area. Anybody who's really anybody, came from your lineage, and which you should be proud of because these are guys that I have a mad respect for, and as we were talking earlier, that's something that's been fading in these crazy martial arts guys these days. That's been fading in me lately is just looking at these guys and man, it's just not what it's just not what it should be. But having the opportunity to work with Kenny and Travis and stuff, and really gave us an ability to shape our martial arts and grow because I could win where I was at the time with my skills, but I knew that even though I was kind of I was kind of the pre-runner to an MMA fighter because I was an all-American wrestler. I was a judo player. I was, and eventually became a world kickboxing champion, but I was at the time I fought for UFC. I was the number 1 rated kickboxer in the world. And I was an undefeated boxer, right? And so I had a lot of skills, right? You know what I mean? And, but and that's really what kept me going because I realized God didn't make me the best athlete. I realized that I'm not the strongest, the fastest, but I am a pretty smart guy. And so I, so I knew what was going to win was I had to outsmart guys, and you got to have, you got to have the right ammunition and the right tool for the job. And diversity was my secret. You know what I mean? And again, I love jiu-jitsu, especially as I got older and stuff like this. I enjoyed jiu-jitsu a great deal as I got older because jiu-jitsu slows the game down a little bit. And, it's like I made a play right after I retired. After I retired from the ring, I was so accustomed to training. It was, and competing, it just sitting on my butt was just like killing me, man. And so I had done some security contracting back in the early 90s, like 91 to 93. And I had met some guys from the Ukraine and Russia that were, it's a long story, but they were in the security business, but they're all ex-wrestlers and Sambo and judo guys. And I became good friends with them while I was doing security work. And then they all were they actually live in Canada. So, and this is now a flash forward. That was like, I kind of kept in touch with them a little bit during the 90s, but because they would watch my fights and things like that, and I'd get calls from them. But, I hadn't seen them a long time, but I called them up after I retired. This is about 2008. I think it was 2008. Yeah, something like 2007, 2008. And I was like, all right.
This episode is brought to you by Machado Method Nutrition, premium fuel for disciplined athletes who train with intent and recover with purpose. Live the method, fuel the life. Start now at Machado Method Nutrition. jiu-jitsu.com.
So I reached out to these guys because they were really good. I mean, you want to talk about some extremely tough guys, and just, so I go, and I was a pretty good judo player, and I thought, you know what, I always wanted to make the Olympic team. And maybe I was a little delusional in my judo skills, probably a lot real delusional in my judo skills. But I thought, you know what, I might try to make the Olympic team. So I called them up. I go, hey, you guys still training? They're going, yeah, we train every now and then like this. I said, well, hey, you mind if I come up? I said, because I don't have anybody really trained with judo here. Not if I come up for a couple of weeks, just see if I can knock out some of the spider webs. And so I did. In about 3 weeks of taking those falls, I was like, yeah, no, I'm staying retired. I don't want to take the throws anymore. I said, I'm gonna stick with jiu-jitsu. I don't get thrown in jiu-jitsu.
It's interesting you're saying that, guy. I did a lot of judo in Brazil. Yeah. That was the time I remember I had the most injuries.
Yeah.
Compared to, and it used to be at the Japanese tatami with the straw and canvas that would burn your skin, and then so hard. You're doing just practice throwing each other.
Yeah, you get.
Man, all my organs were shaking every time.
Amen. That's exactly what happened. And when you're 40 years old, with all the wear and tear I came on my body, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, I'm gonna probably not do that.
So the judo didn't work out.
So judo didn't work out.
All we had left was jiu-jitsu.
Well, I wasn't even really competitive in jiu-jitsu. Like I had never really competed in jiu-jitsu, and but my competitiveness was still my ability to roll. Like, rolling with Kenny was, it's a nightmare. Rolling with Travis is a nightmare. You know what I mean? It's like, and so there was, so that challenging aspect of it was
those two guys, man.
Yeah. And then, of course, Alex and Trey. I mean, wrestling, Alex is like wrestling a javelina or something.
He's one of the strongest guys I've ever seen.
He's unbelievably strong. It's like, he is a freaky strong to this day. I mean, he's mid-50s now.
Yeah. Incredible
and just
shape.
unbelievable shape and just unbelievable. It's just crazy strong, but he's always been that way. Mm-hmm. And, but anyway, so, that was kind of where I reached. And actually the funny part was with jiu-jitsu was, we had a bunch of, guys come in from Brazil and roll, and a bunch of world champions and whatnot. And, and it's not like I'm bad at jiu-jitsu. I'm good at jiu-jitsu, right? And so, and they're like, you should compete in the world championships. I was like, yeah, no, it's like 6 weeks away. To be honest, I've never competed in jiu-jitsu, and, and to get in shape. And they're like, oh, you should do that. And my son, you got to be careful what you say to your kids, because every now and then they actually pay attention. Because all the time I tell my kids, I'd be talking to them, I'd be like going.
How many you got, by the way?
I got 3 kids.
3, okay.
Yeah,
Is Logan the oldest?
No, Logan's my middle child. I have an older son, Jake, and then I have Logan, and then I have Rachel. Okay. And Rachel's 19. She's in college. She's my last child. She just went to college her first year this year. But anyways, my son, Logan, I always talk to him. I was like, hey, the Mezger boys, we don't get out of the way of challenges. We lean into challenges. Challenges come our way, we lean into them. I always said that to him, because he wrestled, and wrestling's tough, man. I mean, wrestling's the toughest sport out there, man. And these kids, man, I get why they want to quit.
They go hard.
They want to quit. I get it. I tell people all the time, college wrestling was tougher than pro fighting for me. Mm-hmm. And so Logan comes up to me and goes, Dad, are you going to compete in the world championships? I go, no, son. I go, first of all, it's only 6 weeks away. I'm not in very good shape. And to be honest, I've never really competed in jiu-jitsu, so I don't even know the rules. And he goes, but Dad, I thought the Mezger boys leaned into challenges. Uh-oh. So I was like, oh no, what do I do? Sign it up. I was fortunate. We had a bunch of really good guys there. I just got in shape and I ended up winning,
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. When was that?
2014. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I won the Worlds. And, and so I kind of retired from jiu-jitsu after that. It's like, yeah.
So I've done it. I got it.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to do that one again,
I think it feels.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think anybody was expecting me to win, It was like, oh, he won again. Oh, we didn't expect that. Oh, he won again. We didn't expect that. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so.
There you go. I assume your son was there watching it.
No, it was in California, so he didn't come. Man. But it was funny because, as you know, I was taking a medicine, and one of the reasons I retired from the ring was I had medicine called Biox, which caused me to have a stroke. And
so the stroke was a side effect from
medicine. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Let's go back to that real quick. Okay. Okay. When you had your karate, the kickboxing, then you started doing MMA.
Yeah, basically.
The Pancrase was right before the MMA. Pancrase.
Well, no, well, Pancrase. No, I fought 2 UFCs and then I went to Pancrase.
Oh, okay. So it was after that. What about Pride?
Pride came after Pancrase.
Okay. So your tenure in MMA, give and take, what was the
Well, it was like from 95 to
wow
2005.
10
Or
years?
2000, actually 2004 was my first MMA fight. And I think my last MMA fight was 2004. So
Wow.
about 10 years.
For you, what would be the best way to describe the differences between UFC and Pride? Besides some of the rule adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, basically that's it. I mean, it's all basically the same thing. I mean,
Because
the
Pride was brutal. They you could kick people in the head.
yeah,
I
well,
remember Silva trying to stomp Dan Henderson's face. From
yeah,
the
yeah,
mouth.
yeah. Well, the rules, it was weird. They didn't allow you to elbow, but they allowed you to stomp somebody in the head on the ground. I'm like,
yeah.
what's
What's the logic there?
Plus, to be honest, I mean, it's like I didn't. It's not like I didn't know this because I dealt with Japanese and dealing with things like this. But they were very much, they had their marketing things. Like when I fought Sakuraba, you know what I mean. They needed Sakuraba to be in that tournament because there wasn't going to be anybody going to sell that tournament to Japanese people. They were expecting him to beat me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I actually had some health issues. I had a kidney disorder that I had to take care of. And that's why I had such a layoff. I had like a 8-month layoff, and
I guess you rest you.
they thought I was going to be rusty and all this other stuff. And it was like, no, I mean, Sakuraba is dangerous, but he, if you play his game like this, but you see, he's not, the thing is he's a good wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
And he can beat most jiu-jitsu guys aren't going to be able to wrestle with him. He's that superior wrestler. And he is unbelievably strong. I mean, that guy is like freaky strong. I will give him that. And, but I'm a better wrestler than he is.
Yeah,
he couldn't take me down.
Yeah.
And so it was a long fight.
Better strikes.
Yes, I had better strikes. Yeah. And so, so they pull a, they pull a thing, out of the thing. So that was, there was no oversight. Like the nice part about fighting in the United States is they have a boxing commission. Not that the boxing commission isn't, somewhat crooked sometimes. Obviously, you see some of these fights, you're like, well, who's called that decision? But there is an oversight. There's not in Japan, and that's the problem. And the rules, to be honest, like I said, the rules were so were so much more liberal. Mm-hmm. Than the UFC and the UFC was doing their best to get accepted in mainstream sports.
They have to walk on eggshells.
Yes. In fact, UFC has more rules than boxing does, right? I mean, boxing has these rules. No, UFC's got like 20, 30 more rules, but they need it, and I'm all good with it, to be honest. I mean, people were like, the guys in my era who fought in the no rules format, we love to brag as if they'll be like, oh, well, in our day, there weren't weight classes. In our day, there wasn't safety equipment. In our day, there weren't time limits. There weren't weight classes. Yeah, okay. That's true. There was no doubt about it. But the thing is, nobody knew how to train for that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the reason why I actually went out to Ken's when I first met Ken, because I saw Pancrase. Pancrase had 30-minute matches. Wow. Okay, so, and the smallest match you could have there was 10 minutes, okay? And if you watch the UFC at that time, not a single match went 10 minutes in the UFC back in the day. And so I'm thinking, all right, if these guys can fight all out for 10 minutes and 30 minutes and stuff like this, these are the guys I want to train with, because these guys are going to have the best idea how to get in shape for this than anybody else. Yep. You know what I mean? And that was the main problem. If we had the knowledge that we have today and we went back to no rules, we'd have dead bodies. Because
you'd be a casualty.
Yeah, because the problem is that you didn't know how to prepare for it.
Yep.
I mean, you just did not know how to prepare for it.
People are fat on that. Like today, fighting more than one match in a single night and going against all timers.
Plus no time limits.
In jiu-jitsu and in life, the foundation is everything. With a weak base, you cannot perform at your best. That's why I'm so excited to share Abstract Champ with you. I've been on the mats my whole life, and I know how important it is to stay connected to the ground. Abstract Chimp brings that philosophy into everyday life. They're stylish, they're functional, and they're designed to evolve with you. So if you care about performance, recovery, and health from the ground up, check them out.
Like now, plus to be now, and again, I like the idea we turned it into a sport. You know what I mean? You know, and it had a lot to do with this simple fact, like, I don't enjoy hurting people, you know. I can justify it because in my head, whether it's truly justification or a real justification or not, I don't know. But I do know that, like, I feel better that it's a sport, you know, because guys can, you know, I can let guys off if I need to. Like in boxing and kickboxing, you know, I knock most everybody out. But if you weren't a dickhead, I would try to knock you out to the body. You know what I mean? Yeah, and some guys I let off. You know, some guys I could put away and I didn't because I just felt bad for them. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not saying the guys that go in there and crush the guys that they're wrong. I'm not just saying that. It was just wrong for me. And you know, and so having the idea in more of a sporting format, is much better for my personal conscience. and what we noticed, again, everyone was like, you know, if I had $1 for everybody, like they train in their martial arts so deadly that they can't actually do any, you know, competitions because they would kill people. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you heard that a million freaking times. Right. It's so stupid. It's beyond belief because all those, I call them killer kung fu guys, all the killer kung fu guys and killer karate guys, they had a chance to show their stuff in the UFC. There were no rules. No time limits, no rules. The first UFC, they had no eye gouging and no biting. And then literally, George Dillman, I mean, you're familiar with George Dillman, but he's the biggest clown in the world. And sorry if you're fans of him, but I'm not because he's a clown. He literally made this statement. He goes, well, I just wouldn't fight in it because it's not truly no rules because you're not allowed to eye gouge. If your entire system consists of winning a fight because you poke somebody in the eye, you got a weak system. Okay. I mean, you know, but they made that argument. So UFC 2, they took all the rules out. And I'll be honest, that didn't set well with me. You know, I mean, I wasn't thinking about doing MMA because MMA really wasn't MMA back then. It was no holds barred. There was no future in it. And there really wasn't a future because
the scale was not there.
Yeah, well, the fact that we love our violence in America, but we like to consider ourselves civilized, so we call them games. What is football but 11 armored knights fighting another 11 armored knights? What is rugby? You know what I mean? You know, soccer, even though I make fun of guys falling down and stuff like this, but soccer is actually rough. I mean, I played it, man. I had some horrible injuries from soccer. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, there's just, you know, there's no such thing, you know? And so these guys, they came in there and, you know, and who won were the sport athletes. You know, it was the wrestler who became very dominating. And like, you know, wrestling changed everything. It changed jiu-jitsu because, again, one of the reasons that everybody was like, that I was able to like as a white belt in jiu-jitsu. Well, I also had strong background in judo, which is similar, right? But was from wrestling because 100%. Wrestling, I was, you know, jiu-jitsu was a much slower game even back then. And now it's not. I mean, look at jiu-jitsu now. It is a much faster game because all these wrestlers got into it and they're used to going fast.
Even the jiu-jitsu guys, they do wrestling.
Yes.
So
all the jiu-jitsu guys do wrestling now.
The beneficial thing, because you should be unison. You should be well-rounded. Even if you're just talking about grappling. Yeah. But I have to say, back in the old days when I first came, wrestlers are always the toughest to deal with just because there's sheer balance and control.
And they're just physically strong guys.
And the conditioning.
Yes.
Like, I don't think, maybe I could be mistaken, you know, I don't think there's any sport that gives you more conditioning than wrestling.
No, I doubt it.
I don't think, because I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. You know?
Well, you know, the thing about not being a medical scientist, I can also, the main thing, like, that combat athletics do in general is that you are working on so many different energy loads. You work on your aerobic, your anaerobic thresholds. You're working on, everything from, fat expenditure, fatty acid expenditure to glycogen expenditure. Your VO2 max is a super important part about what's going on. And there's very few sports that require every aspect of that
to be on.
Yes,
Yeah,
to
high
be successful. Yes. I mean, a marathoner, a marathoner has slow twitch muscles. They have to have a huge amount of endurance. And I have mad respect for marathoners. It's not something I enjoy doing or would want to do. But you take a marathoner who's could run for 3 hours straight, and you put him in on a boxing match, and without even hurting him, just making him throw punches, he's gonna be exhausted in 30, 40 seconds.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. It doesn't matter. Any combat sport, it's gonna do it. I had professional football players, right? And so I started training them. And then so a couple of days I would do boxing with them, mainly work with their hands and stuff like that for the hand fighting that in football. And so these guys would wear out in 30 seconds. These are professional athletes that are freaks at a level. It's so hard to explain like what the average NFL football player is genetically freaky. It's like, I got friends, I could have played ball. No, you couldn't. I've trained these guys. They're at a physical freak level that you would never understand. But even those guys who are these freaky and conditioning guys like this couldn't last 30 seconds. It literally was like, of all out fighting. But combat athletes can do that. We do that on a regular basis. We fight for, 3 or 4 minutes straight, when we literally have there's no energy source feeding us, but somehow we still do it. And, and that and wrestling is kind of the king daddy of that, just the nature. Like my son grew up wrestling. And so he
remember you talking about you would take him to Oklahoma all the time.
Oh yeah, take him to Oklahoma. Yeah. He won he won the JOC, which is a national tournament up there, and he won the JOC, which I was real proud of him on. Probably his best accomplishment, really. But the athlete there is just like he was 16 years old, and I have a contract with the Navy, and I trained a lot of their special operation guys, mostly SEALs and EOD guys and things like that. And so one time they came up and they're all like, "Hey, we want to spar," and I was like. And I actually had an injury, and I wasn't normally I'd get in there and spar a little bit even with an injury, but I was like, I don't know how good any of these guys are. And I really didn't want, this. I said, I'll let you spar with my son. They're all like laughing. Logan whooped him. He was 16 years old at the time. And he was already 6'1", he was 185 pounds, solid muscle wrestler. And it wasn't like they were pushing him around. He was 16 years old. They weren't pushing him around. He was pushing them around. And that's what wrestling gets you. That's why I always say to people, it's like, people talk to me about, want to get their kids into wrestling or into MMA. I want run him through wrestling. If he can handle wrestling, he can handle MMA. If he can't handle wrestling, he ain't going to handle MMA.
Yeah, I tell you this, I was in Iowa a while back. I have a black belt of mine, Darren DeSalvo. His son, Nico DeSalvo, I think he's going to be 18 this year. He might be 18 already. I think he was 16 when I went there. So he was like, I guess, top 3 in the nation in wrestling. You know how Iowa,
Yeah, I was awesome.
So I went to their high school and just watched a practice, let's say a light day. And listen, they were at a pace that if this is light, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Because I guess they're just starting the season. They want to kind of get themselves back in the swing. So they're used even on a light day to be at such a high level of physicality,
Well, when I was a kid,
so
I used to tell people all the time, it's like, when I was a kid, my bike got stolen, okay? And so all my friends had bikes. And so they're riding their bikes, and I'd just jog. I'd jog in my wrestling shoes or in sandals, right? And I wouldn't go as fast as they would. They had to go slow. But we would go, back then we traveled everywhere. I would never tire out, because I was wrestling. And, I always tell people all the time, it's like that.
One thing though, from a coach's perspective, I always think, especially now, you're 58, I'm 62. I always think in terms of longevity. I want to be able to continue to train jiu-jitsu personally until I'm 100 plus. So you got to mitigate whatever potential wear and tear or injuries and stuff like that. And one of the things I've seen, because my kids wrestle for several years as well as part of their protocol, and the intensity in which they do sometimes, I always try from a jiu-jitsu perspective, find an option to offset intensity with leverage. So, if I can lower the amount of effort in minimize the energy expenditure, in exchange for getting the move to work with more technicality.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that they didn't have the technicality, but when you have a wrestling coach in a full, wrestling mat area, and all those kids are preparing to compete and everything, it's kind of like mass producing competitors. So I don't think they have the structure of the time to work the finesse.
Well,
If that makes any sense.
yeah. Well,
So
it
I
should
saw.
depend on the
Look,
coaching.
let me tell you this: every wrestler, and I have several top wrestlers there, either have been my students or continue to be my students. The amount of injuries that they've had, I haven't met yet a single one that haven't had a knee problem,
Yeah.
a shoulder problem. It's just the nature of the beast because
Yeah.
they have to go. But a lot of times,
Well,
guys,
the intensity level
yeah.
is
So
like at a level which is like trying to explain it to somebody.
Yeah.
They think you're like
I can give you an analogy.
they don't believe you.
Let me tell you this. Imagine you are in those super bands, those highways in Europe that has no speed limit.
Yeah.
And you go 180, 200 miles per hour in a fast car, right?
Mhm.
There's no margin for error. If you have a flat tire blows, or you hit something on the way, an object, I don't know how much gear you have to redirect the car without losing control. So I think in those matches, just the preparation, the intensity is out there because they have to emulate the combat. I guess they're
Yeah.
going to have to
Well,
face.
every match is
Yeah. So
every
every
wrestling
training
match is a
session
match.
is a tournament, so to speak. But like I said, so I have this dilemma on my end because I think, and I understand the purpose of it has to be, taking consideration. They have to train hard because if they don't, they're not going to make it.
They're gonna win.
That's pretty much. But me, I'm thinking I want to train as hard as I can, but at the same time mitigate.
Well,
What approach can I use that I don't compromise one or the other?
yeah. Well,
So
it's what I always tell people is like this. There is, it's how I used to describe judo. Okay, so judo, judo when you are 14 to 25 or 14 to 30. You're into throws. You're into throwing guys for as high as you can, as hard as you can. The intensity level is a much faster, harder game. All right. You hit 30, then it's leg sweeps and it's a slower game. And then you hit 40s, it's all ground game. That's how judo goes. I mean, you like at Vince Tamura's school, you'd see all the young kids doing these fancy throws. Then there would be the guys that are in their 30s and 40s, and they're doing takedowns too, but they're doing like leg sweeps and trips and things like that. And then there was the guys that were in their 50s and above, and all they did was groundwork, right? You know what I mean? And so there's an evolutionary process, or in this case, a de-evolutionary process. But it's like I always tell people, learn the difficult stuff when you're young. You know what I mean? I mean, like I say, don't start wrestling. And I wouldn't recommend somebody at 40 years old to start wrestling. You might learn some takedown defense, which is different from wrestling. That's just learning an aspect of it, which is super important. Obviously, you don't want to, taking somebody down or not being taken down dictates how a fight's going to go. And so, I always tell people to do is I don't wrestle anymore. I mean, I do jiu-jitsu, but I don't wrestle anymore. Mainly because the last time I wrestled, my son handed me my ass, and so I was like, all right.
Was a pride thing.
Well, a little bit of a pride thing, but a little bit also reconciliation, recognizing the fact that
Passing the torch.
Yeah, I mean, it's time. It's time to do something else. It's just like as much as I would like to think I'm going to escape the aging process. I'm not gonna. I might age better than most the average guys a little bit, but that's still part of what's gonna happen. And so it's like I'm just gonna injure myself. And so, but because of my wrestling background, to this day, you're gonna have a very, 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 very hard time taking me down. Doesn't matter. I haven't like wrestled in 2 years. Like I wrestled my son 2 years ago. That was the last time I really did wrestling. I mean, I've done jiu-jitsu, but none of the jiu-jitsu guys could really wrestle at the level my son could wrestle at.
You have it ingrained in you.
Yes. And so I always tell people, learn the difficult stuff when you're younger. All these guys, they're like, nah, we're going to do it. No, do it when you're younger so you recover. Because yes, a good, what's going to keep most people out of this game is injuries. And so, and that's why jiu-jitsu actually is potentially, a much better activity for people as they get older, because, when what you're not going to lose, and this is science stuff, okay? You're going to lose your speed, you're going to lose your reflexes, okay? And those go markedly down in your 30s, mid 30s on down, goes markedly down. Now there's certain people that are genetically freaky that doesn't happen until later on. Yeah, huh?
See that Cuban guy, URL.
Yeah.
He does bare knuckle now and stuff. The guy still looks like.
Yeah.
That guy's a specimen. He's
a freak of nature. There's no doubt about it.
But not everybody's like him.
Yeah. Well, there's a few guys that are like that, right? But by and large, they're not, right? Mm-hmm. And so, so you just got to have this. You've got to be able to accept the process, and jiu-jitsu allows you to be able to, because jiu-jitsu allows, especially with gi jiu-jitsu. I mean, no gi jiu-jitsu obviously is a faster moving activity, but with gi jiu-jitsu or even like what I would consider old school judo, the ability to grab onto the gi and slow things down allows you to participate in the thing, even if you are, 60 years old, 70 years old, something like that, because of what you don't lose is your physical strength. As long as you don't, there's a term called scapopenia, and it's age-related muscle wasting. Basically, it comes from the fact that your body, as you get older, has an inability to absorb protein the same. And so most people don't adjust their protein intake. Just so you know, all you guys, if you're over 50, and you are, I don't know if you are, but if you are, you need to be adding more protein or essential amino acids, because the same amount that you used to do isn't going to do the same as it did when you were a younger man. And so as long as you combat the scapopenia, like you keep that at bay with hard training and good diet and things like that, you're not going to lose your strength until you're in your mid 70s. All right. And, and so once I get my hands on you, because I was a wrestler and a judo player and a jiu-jitsu guy, if I can get my hands on you, you're going to be as long as I got my hands on you, you're going to be in some trouble. All right. And so that's where we go. And that's one reason why jiu-jitsu does make a very, very practical form of self-defense as you get older, because trying to sit out and duke it out with the guy, trying to counter some thugs, right cross with your right cross may not turn out good for you. You might've been able to do that when you're in your 20s and 30s, maybe in your 40s, but you might not have the reaction time like that, and so, but if I can get my hands on you, my strength is always going to be there. And as much as everyone goes, let's face it, being strong makes jiu-jitsu easier.
Oh, I'm a believer.
Yeah. So, I always tell people go, oh, you don't need to be strong. No, it helps.
I have
it helps a lot.
I have some students who are tremendously strong.
Yeah.
And they try to be technical, meaning I'm not going to use my strength, so I'm going to just be technical. I said, no. You use your strength by all means with the technique.
Yes.
Because you're going to prevail.
Yeah.
You have a weak guy that has techniques with a strong guy without techniques. I can give some potential opportunities for the weaker guy, but you put the two guys with the equal techniques, or not even equal. The stronger guy with just enough techniques to magnify his potential with the strength advantage. Yes. He's going to take it.
Yeah. I used to get people, that was always a big thing in martial arts in general, not just jiu-jitsu or judo or anything like that. They would always like, well, good karate guy, he doesn't need to be strong. Yeah, you do.
Yep.
You do.
I have to admit, Guy, I started doing weight training again, and it has been a while, and I'm not going to stop it.
Don't.
Because it's not that I want to gain more strength. It is so critical for longevity and health, and it keeps my body from getting hurt while I'm doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
My joints are...
Well, your joints are going to get... Okay, so putting on my doctor hat here real quick, two things that you want to do is, okay, one thing is that exactly, when you talk about joints, okay, so you're going to get a loosening of the joints just because of wear and tear on your thing. It's just, if you do anything remotely athletic, any point in your life, you're going to be wearing those out. So what keeps those things from going in a bad place is the muscles. Like in my right knee, I have no medial collateral or lateral collateral in my knee. Now, normally I would have problems with stabilization, but because I work out and do stuff like that, I can still do full length squat. I mean, butt to heel squats with weight. I don't do a lot of weighted squats anymore just because it's not what I need, but I could if I had to, because of the muscular in my strength. Now, if I did not work my legs out, this would be a problem.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And that's going to be the thing of doing. But again, the doctor had here, the number one factor for mortality in men and women is not your VO2 max. It's not your cholesterol levels, which is classically what it is, whether your heart's in doing, whether you get, your cholesterol levels are, or even metabolic syndrome, which is pre-diabetes basically. Because most of us as we get older, we get kind of that metabolics because we become insulin insensitive. And if we're not having a good diet and we're not conscientious, it's worse, right? Guys like you and me, and hopefully you, who are conscientious of what they eat, are going to have a little bit, but we're still going to have that insulin insensitivity, right? It's just part of the deal. We've got a way around it, but you can't. But you got to work out. But what is it? Strength. Believe it or not, strength is the highest mortality rate. For men, it's grip strength and quad strength. But there are 6 exercises, and I wrote a paper on this, and I'll send it to you so you can have it just for your own thing. And it basically categorizes like where you should be. Like minimum, you should be at 20 years old. Minimum, you should be at 30, 40, 50, up to 60. I couldn't get any good information past 60 to be able to put it in this paper I wrote. But basically what I did is give a minimum of what you should be able to do. And there's 6 exercises, basically grip strength, like farmer's walks, push-ups, squats, nothing fancy, but it basically hits you. You should have a minimum of all these things in order to, and then you're going to find it. And so with me being Mr. Competitive, it's like after designing the whole thing and got it, and I didn't do it all by myself. I had a really good medical scientist that helped me out with it, who's a lot smarter than me. And so I did. So I looked at it and I said, I can do. So there were levels. This is excellent. This is good. This is okay. And this needs improvement. Those are the levels in which I have it. And it gives you things. So I was excellent for the 50-year-old group. I was excellent for the 40-year-old group, but the 30-year-old group, I was only excellent in three of the things. I was okay. I was okay in 2 of them, and I needed improvement in 1 of them. So in my mind, now I have the challenge. Now I've got to be excellent in all 30 of them. Being a 30-year-old, I want to be strength-wise for 30. And as much as it's kind of obviously ego-driven, but it's also super important. If you don't take care of your strength like this, and I don't mean to get on a weird tangent because I know we were talking about martial arts, but it is super important for you, your health. Absolutely super important. Women too. Women the same thing.
Well, I'd like to touch on what you mentioned earlier, that because when you disclosed to me that you had a stroke at a point in time, I didn't know the specifics of it until you told me there was a side effect of some medication that you're taking, and I was under the assumption that it might have been a side effect of some brain trauma.
Well, that's what everyone thought.
So if you don't mind, because I know this is like a determining factor, correct me if I'm mistaken, in you choosing the path that you are now as a holistic doctor.
Well, I think there's a lot of real factors came into it, but I'll give you a quick rundown. It's like I was taking a arthritis medicine called Vioxx, and it was pretty successful on taking care of arthritis, because my knees had taken a beating from years and years of fighting, and the Vioxx worked. But the problem with the Vioxx was, and this is the heinous part about big pharma, they knew it was causing problems. But here's the deal. People that were getting prescribed Vioxx were generally 65 years and older, because it's really good for age-related, or it was prescribed mostly for age-related arthritis versus, systemic arthritis. And so having a heart attack or stroke at 65, that's a lot more common than somebody at 30 years old, right? And so...
How old are you?
I was like 36 at the time. Okay. So I was in my mid-30s, 30, 35, 36, something like that. Might have been 37, somewhere around there, mid-30s. And so it wasn't really looked at until athletes, and to be honest, I was one of the athletes. Me, who else? There was a couple other guys. There was a basketball player, 2 football players, and a professional baseball player, I believe. 2 of them had heart attacks, 2 of them had strokes. Should never have had them, right? What was the deciding factor? Vioxx. And literally they did the study and they realized, holy shit, Vioxx. They looked at all these people that were taking Vioxx and, you know, literally, and I'm talking a ridiculous amount, like 1/15 of them. So 1 in 15 people who took it was having heart conditions or stroke or stroke
That's
conditions.
scary.
You think? And they covered it up. Anyway, that's why they got the shit suit out of them. But it was interesting because I was taking the Vioxx, and literally the day before I had the stroke, they took Vioxx off the market.
You had no idea.
Well, I saw the news. I go, why are they taking the Vioxx off the market, right? And I called my doctor buddy who actually, and he's like, yeah, dude, stop taking it. The next day I had a stroke. So it was actually,
were you retired? Were you retired by then, or you had to retire after that?
I retired after that. I was actually training for a fight. But
Okay.
you know, to be honest, man, it's weird how God looks after you. As much as that you would say, you know, a stroke is a bad thing, which it's not a good thing. Okay. And I was fortunate. The type of stroke I had didn't really have that big effect. In fact, I didn't even realize I had a stroke. The only reason I realized I had the stroke was that I didn't sleep real well that night, you know, when I had it like this. And so I was gonna say, you know what, I'm gonna take the day off from training. I'm gonna do my medicals, because at 35, you have for New Jersey, you have some pretty extensive medicals you have to do. And so I said, I'm gonna just go do that. I've got to take a day or two off. I'm just too tired. So I go in there and they start doing all the brain scan stuff. And then they go, Mr. Mezger, we're going to take you down to the emergency room real quick. I'm like, why? And they go,
You're
well,
so lucky. You're
they're
so
like,
lucky.
they're like, yeah, we got a problem here. And so, which was interesting. I don't know if you want to go into my whole story on that. I can go into the whole story. It was but then it happened. So I go there and I'm sitting there forever, waiting, you know, and nobody's giving me information. Now I'm freaking out a little bit now, right? Obviously I'm in the emergency room. That means something's didn't go right in one of my tests. And I've been done a bunch of them, dude. So I don't even know which one it was. They did a heart, you know, they did the pulmonary heart test. They did, you know, the CT scan of my chest. They did a CT scan of my brain. They did, you know, all this other stuff. And I'm like, you know, what's going on? You know, I mean, you know, I did my blood pressure, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I never had high blood pressure or anything. And so I'm like, and so I finally, this nurse, and of course I call her angel of death because she's a complete psychotic, obviously a nurse who does not want to work in the emergency room anymore. She literally comes up and she's like not very nice to start with me, you know. And of course, because she found out I fought professionally for a living, and she thought, you know, she was didn't hold back on sharing with me her disapproval of that, and just fine. I don't really care if you know, I never offended. You don't like fighting? I'm good with it. You like fighting? I'm good with it. I'm not here to impress you anyways. You know what I mean? And so, but you know, so she sat there like this, and then, you know, so I'm like, can you tell me what's going on? I don't know what's going on. And she goes, and she's just like so put out. And Ken was there, and Ken's like trying to say, and she takes my x-rays and she puts them up. She goes, you see that? I go, yeah, it's a chest x-ray. You see my heart. She goes, that's an enlarged heart. I go, of course it's an enlarged heart. I'm a performance athlete. She goes, well, men like this have, with large hearts like this, you know, most of them die within 5 years. Now, Ken Shamrock is sitting there with me, and he's like, what? And I'm like going, and I'm like, I'm already paramedic. I've been paramedic trained, you know what I mean, and stuff. And I'm like, you can't tell an enlarged heart issue with an x-ray, just so you know. And it's not the enlarged heart part that's the problem. It's like when you do drug use and stuff like that, a part of your heart, mainly the right aorta, it grows, it enlarges out here like this. So it becomes like a balloon that you blow up too many times where it doesn't hold the thing like that. That's what happens. So instead of being able to compress like that, that's when an enlarged heart is a problem. You have an enlarged heart because you've been a combat athlete your entire freaking life, okay? Since you could walk. And you've been a competitor and all the other stuff that requires. So in order for to be able to do that, your heart had to get stronger and better. So it's going to get larger. Why? Because it's a muscle. If it's malformed, then that's the problem. And I was like, I looked at this lady, and Ken's like, he's on the phone with my wife, and I know he's going to be telling my wife I'm going to die in 5 years. I'm like, Ken, this lady is an idiot. And she's like, what? I go, you're an idiot. I said to her, I can't believe you do this. I said, you need to get out of here. I don't ever want to see you again in here. You need to bring the doctor in and another nurse. And she goes, oh, well, why don't you tell me you're a medical expert? Well, not that I have to be a medical expert, but you said I have an enlarged heart. Is there malforming in my heart? And she goes, well, you can't really tell that on an x-ray. Exactly. But you're going to tell my coach that I'm going to die within 5 years, who's on the phone to my wife, he's telling me I'm going to die in 5 years. Like, get out of here. I mean, I was like so livid. It was crazy. I probably almost had a heart attack then. I was so pissed. Doctor comes in and he's like, hey, you can't talk to our nurses. And I said, oh yeah, your nurse told, and I told him what he did. And he's like, he turned pale and he's like, oh, okay. He goes, do I need to get an administrator here? I go, no, you just never have to get her. I never want to see her again. I go, this is ridiculous. And she goes, I said, what did my heart test? Goes, yeah, your heart's fine. I mean, your heart's like a racehorse. You don't have a problem with that. I go, exactly. But now my coach just told my wife, I guarantee it, because I couldn't catch him, that I'm going to die in 5 years on this. She's already stressed out enough because I'm fighting like this. You know, then he goes, well, we do have a problem with it. Like this. I go, what? He goes, well, we're going to have another doctor come and explain it to you. I said, all right. And so my wife, freaking out, she flew out, you know, and couldn't stop her from doing that. God love her. She's an amazing woman. I'm so fortunate. And she flew out and she gets there and then the neurologist comes in and he's like, yeah, hey, we need to go over some stuff, but we don't need to go over it tonight. We're going to keep you overnight, but tomorrow morning, why don't you come to my office and we'll go over something. So I'm like, all right. Well, I felt good. I felt it. And I'm like, I'm not even going to the other thing. Now I missed 2 days of training.
They kept you.
They kept me overnight. Yeah. They kept me overnight. It's standard procedure for having a stroke, but I didn't have a stroke yet. I didn't even know I had a stroke yet. And so the next day I get up and, you know, I mean, I'm like up at 6 a.m. I'm like ready to rest. I'll go get some stuff going on. So I'm like, I missed 2 days of training. I'm not going to miss any more. And she goes, babe, you got this thing with the doctor. I go, I'm not, I don't need to be told that's, you know, like I'm okay. And I need to get trained. She goes, no, she insisted I go. And thank goodness she did, because I went there and he's like, yeah, you had what's called the silent killer stroke. Most people have a stroke like you don't know they have a stroke. Well, you had 2 of them back to back. And he goes, yeah, you're not fighting. And normally you would look at that as a bad thing. And at the time I did, but it was a blessing. Like I said, God works in mysterious ways and he does, because I was done with the fight business, man. I mean, I fought professionally for 17 years. And what most people don't realize is I had 145 professional fights. I literally had 2 careers. I had a kickboxing career that I had like 60 something fights. And I had another like 50, 60 fights in MMA and no holds barred, you know? And so I was just done. I mean, I love the performance part of it. And I would do that till I couldn't walk. But the business part of it and dealing with all those people and dealing with all that, you know, let's put it this way. Fight promoters, I think they're agnostic by natural thing, because they can't believe in a hell. Because if they did, they would realize that there's a nice warm space by the fireplace for these guys. They are a unique bunch of scumbags and they don't care about you. And I realized that right off the bat. It wasn't like my feelings got hurt about that. I realized that this is a business transaction and I'm a commodity and I'm as good as the fruit is. As soon as I get too bruised or too old, I realize I'm done. It didn't hurt my feelings. Okay. But it still wears on your soul. Mm-hmm. And I had done that. Like, that's all I turned pro at 20. I was making almost all my entire living. I still taught. I loved teaching. I still had a gym. I was always successful, but 90% of my income was coming from fighting by the time I was 24 years old. And so, you know, that was my career and I didn't know what to do. I hadn't finished college. Now everyone thought I finished college because I had a good, decent wrestling career in college. I hadn't finished college. And the gym makes money. I mean, it makes real good money, but doesn't make the money that I'm making fighting. You know, I mean, just didn't. And, you know, and especially because Japan was they were very generous at the time compared to the UFC. UFC was paying like, you know, 20 grand, you know, Pride was paying like 80 grand, you know, that would be like UFC offering 25 grand for a fight that, you know, Pride offered me 100,000 for. So literally 5 times, you know, it's like, okay, who am I going to fight for? Right. And so, but I was done with dealing with that stuff, you know, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. You know, I was like, where am I going to make this money? You know, what I can do? I got a family, you know, here. I was starting with, you know, I had an older son, Jake, and Logan was on at the time, he was on the way, you know, my wife was pregnant, and I was like, man, what am I going to do?
What year was that?
2004.
2004.
And
22 years ago. Man.
yeah, it was a while back. And so I was like, man, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I realized, very fortunate things happened to me. I first of all, I have a very supportive wife, and I know that you have a pretty amazing wife too. So I enjoy dealing company with men who know that the amazing people they have in their life, and wife being one of them. And my wife is amazing. I mean, she truly is. She is the most beautiful, kindest person I've ever met. When I first met my wife, I was like, man, nobody this good looking is this nice. She's got to be working. It's got to be a good, but she just is. She's just generally one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet, and very supportive. She goes, I was like, and I was very honest with her. You start questioning yourself as a man. I'm in my mid-30s. What the hell am I going to do with myself now? You know what I mean? I didn't have an exit strategy, especially an exit strategy like this. What am I going to do? And my wife's like, we'll figure it out, baby. Don't worry about it. But I was worried about it. I mean, obviously I was worried about it. A man should be worried about it. Okay. And so I was in quite a quandary, and I, I was like, all right, I just focus my energy, just build up the gym, make it bigger and better. And then I was very fortunate because Mark Cuban, I was doing some consulting work for guys doing the shows, and they called me up, and they were like, it was funny. Well, actually, Mark called me up, and Mark has a habit of talking to you like your old friends or something, and I had met him one time, briefly, it was like, hi, Mark Cuban, Guy Mezger, hey, man. That was it, right? You know what I mean? And then he calls me up like we're long lost brothers or something. He's like, hey, Guy, what's going on? I go, hey, what's going on? And he's like talking away, and I'm like, hey, man, who am I talking with? Because I didn't recognize the number. He goes, oh, this is Mark. I go, Mark Cuban. I'm like, I thought it was my staff because we always play practical jokes on each other. I was like, all right, which one? I said, who put you up to this stuff? And I was like, and he's like, no, it's Mark. I go, no, dude, like this. He goes, no, seriously, it's Mark Cuban. I want to talk to you about the MMA stuff, for doing it for.
That's when he started his thing, right?
Yeah. And then so I was fortunate.
What was his TV thing?
HDNet.
HDNet.
It's Access TV now. Yeah. It's Access TV now. They merged with Seacrest's company, and they changed the name. And so anyways,
I remember that guy.
Yeah, he gave me an opportunity to, and so we ended up being in the television business for 5 years. And what it really did for me more than anything was give me a great deal of confidence in myself outside of the fight realm. Think about it. You know everything about jiu-jitsu and competition and running a gym and teaching, things like that. But then what if you had to be put into something you don't know? What if this is all taken away from you? Then you say to yourself, where do you go? You know what I mean? And that's where I was. And so having obviously one of the smartest guys in the world, because Mark is very smart and people are real critical, but that man, he's 3-4 steps ahead of you. Okay. Oh, yeah. Just always know that. Whenever you have a conversation with him, he's 3 or 4 steps ahead of you. As long as you understand that, you'll be fine because you'll keep yourself in check. and I bet, well, here's a guy with tremendous amount, success and stuff, and he has confidence in me to do this. And it was very beneficial for me because it allowed me to step out of my world that I was accustomed to working, which was the fight business and teaching and stuff like that, into a brand new world, which again did have the financial reward that I was looking for that the gym just wasn't going to bring. There's a difference between, making, $100,000 a year being a martial arts instructor, you know what I mean? Which is actually a really great living, but you make that kind of money at least or more, obviously probably more, but we've been doing it a long time. You know what I mean? We've kind of figured out how to do this. You know what I mean? Not many guys in our profession do make that kind of money. You know what I mean? But still, when you think about it, you got kids, I got kids. That's hard to live on today, which sounds crazy, right? Because when I was a kid, man, oh my God, if I can make $100,000, I'll be set. Until you make $100,000. Yeah. And then you find out you're not. And so having this thing was a boost because it really gave me a confidence in myself outside of being the tough guy, outside being the instructor and all that kind of stuff. It was something brand new. I had to, do stuff. And I had no television background. It wasn't like I had a television background. I just had an idea and vision. And so what I realized was that other people of quality. I would call, I'm capable of impressing them. I'm capable of capturing their eye. And it was beneficial because I got put in situations and dealing with people in situations that were completely new to me, you know what I mean? And having to just make it happen.
Wasn't that a step ahead of time when you had HD Net? For some of the people that may have missed those, one of the first times that they streamed, other than pay-per-views, they streamed fights like the way nowadays you see that happening all the time.
Yeah.
But back then, wasn't
new.
that one of the first?
Yeah, it was one of the, it was new. The thing with HDNet was they were trying to find a market space because at first, like when HD TVs came out, they were these great big huge things. They weren't these monitors right here like this. They were literally like 3 feet deep. They were that size, but they were like 3 feet. They were these massive things, and they were expensive. They were $4,000. Well, the average 20-year-old kid isn't buying a $4,000 TV. Yeah. You know what I mean? The average 30 plus year old guy did. So they were trying to figure out, where do we get a marketplace to attract these older guys? Because it generally was men, the 30 plus year old men that were buying the HD TVs. And so my sell to them was like, I said, this is something new. MMA is still relatively new.
How did it do, HDNet? At the time it was in operation?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was relatively successful. Okay. They were doing well, but they were still trying to find a niche, right? Mm-hmm. And so, so I brought in. Not only did I bring in MMA, but I brought the sporting things into, like that. And so we basically developed a sporting angle to it, which I said that's what 30-year-old men are going to watch, and they're going to watch it. They're going to watch it on a fuzzy TV, but they're going to really want to watch it in HDNet. And so that's really where it came from. And then what we saw was there was a marketplace for getting fights, MMA fights that had really great athletes that was not UFC. You know what I mean? And
was the pay good for the fighters?
Well, it depends on who was promoting it. You know what I mean? It varied on different levels. Again, it was still, it still varies. I mean, to be honest, you get anywhere from $500 a fight to $1 million a fight, depending on where you're fighting, who you're fighting. Mm-hmm. But it was good, and so that was a launching board for me to do other things.
Once you went through that phase with HDNet. Because I know you're a doctor, holistic doctor now. I'm kind of intrigued, and we're going to try to explore a little bit of that part, your wellness and health journey.
Yeah. Well, okay. So how I decided to step into that was I'm a big fan of education, but I hadn't finished college. You know what I mean? And I preached to my kids about education, and I hadn't finished college. And I always wanted to be a doctor. I mean, if I had the capacity to be a doctor when I was in my, crazy youth, I would have been a doctor. I wouldn't have been a fighter. I mean, to be honest. And, but I had this opportunity, and it was funny because Mark, he was like, cause he sold, his controlling interest to the Seacrest's group. And they were nice guys.
About HDNet. He sold HDNet.
Yeah, HDNet. They became Access TV after that.
Yeah, I remember that too.
And so they were nice guys and everything, but they did this business. I mean, like I would go to our meetings in a tank top, shorts, and sandals. Not much different than I am right now, right? And so that's how I go to my, our meetings, right? Like this, but those guys were all suit and tie guys, right? So immediately I was like, all right, the culture is going to be something I'm not going to enjoy. And I was like, I'm going to just go out on top. I mean, it's the number one programming on HDNet. We're crushing it. I'm probably not going to last here too much longer just because not that they were bad guys or nothing. Just, there's a difference. And, some people like peanut butter, other people like, jelly, you know what I mean? Sometimes they don't go good together. So that's the way it is. And, so I was leaving, and Mark goes, "You're leaving? Why?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I talked to his personal lawyer, and they're like, "Yeah." I go, "I just think it's a good time for me." And so for my severance pay, he goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm enrolled in the National University of Natural Medicine in Oregon, and I'm going to pursue getting my medical degree on that." And he's like, "They paid for it. My severance pay was paying for the school."
Are you serious?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So he did me a double solid. Not only did he give me an opportunity that, you would just die for. Most people would die for that opportunity that I got, but he also ended up paying for my second journey in life, or my third journey in life, I guess. I was a professional fighter. I was a television executive. Now I'm a doctor. So, so I tell people all the time, it's like, you don't have to be stuck with whatever you're doing. If you're not liking what you're doing, you can do stuff. Because I went back to college at 36 years old, man, and it wasn't easy. I finished my undergrad. The only thing is I could finish my undergrad. I finished that in a year and a half. So I wasn't like a tough. And they wouldn't let me in the PhD program. They kept turning me down. And I finally just said, I'm not leaving until you guys accept me. And there was a really good guy. He was my mentor during my PhD program. He said, he talked them into letting me go. And he was very beneficial in my life because he was an orthopedist originally. And in his 70s, when he retired from orthopedics, he started having some health issues. So he started investigating, different ways to handle it. And that's when he got into naturopathic medicine real well. And he was really the guy who helped me bridge the gap between allopathic medicine, which is medicine, and natural medicine, because that's what we practice. In our practice, we're a integrated practice. But he was really one of the very first guys to do that. And he gave me a tremendous amount of insight and patience, because as you know, I've dealt with me before, I can be difficult at times. And he was very beneficial. Again, I've been blessed just having certain people show up in my life when I was, when I needed them to. And this was a guy who went to bat for me. So I got in the PhD program, and I crushed it, to be honest. I crushed it.
That's incredible.
And a lot with his help, and help with some other people, like my studies and stuff, like my paper I wrote. It was actually, I was involved in a study. I was trying to do all a bunch of human performance stuff, but they kept turning it down. And so I ended up doing a study on the rise of juvenile diabetes, marking the use of high fructose corn syrup. It goes hand in hand. Like, so my paper was like basically showing that when they started using high fructose corn syrup, originally, like before the 80s, high fructose corn syrup was used as to make liquor. It was used as a solvent. It was used as a fuel. A little bit used as a sweetener, but not very much. Usually in really high, processed foods and stuff like that. They would use a little bit of that. But it came to the forefront when Coca-Cola started really using it, because Coca-Cola went from, there was an ad campaign. I don't know if you are how familiar with the Coke thing, but they had a thing called the Pepsi Challenge. And the Pepsi Challenge was, so you probably remember the Pepsi Challenge, right? Yeah. And so what it was they would have people, drink a Coke or a Pepsi. It was hidden, and you would sip one, sip the other one, which you're like, well, Pepsi won. And it legitimately did win those contests. But that was because Pepsi is sweeter than Coca-Cola. And if you just sip it, it tastes better than Coke by itself. But if you had to drink the whole Coke, the Pepsi will literally make you it did to me. It made me almost sick to my stomach.
So you have
Coke.
to drink the entire Pepsi. You feel sick on your stomach.
Well, it tends to be. I mean, I did.
Yeah.
It's a lot sweeter. So people liked, if they had to drink the whole drink, they like Coke better. But just to sip it, they liked the Pepsi better. And so it got in Coke's head, though. They didn't realize that, right? They saw Pepsi win this, so they changed the thing called New Coke. So they made it a lot sweeter.
It was a flunk, right? You lasted for a bit, but then
it was a flop. It was a flop because people enjoy real Coca-Cola, and so. But they in order to make up, at the time, sugar was very expensive, so they started really using high fructose corn syrup a lot more, and became the main ingredient. In fact, the only Coke you get now with cane sugar is Mexican Coke. They make it in Mexico. They make it with.
Are you serious? So every Coke is
high fructose corn syrup.
Corn syrup.
Yep. Wow. Every soft drink is. Yeah. Unless it specifically is like some kind of like all the major Coke brands like Coke, Pepsi, A&W, Dr. Pepper. They all use high fructose syrup. But there's actually a direct correlation between that and the rise of juvenile diabetes, because before, the amount of juvenile diabetes was like next to nothing. In fact, they didn't even call it type 2 diabetes back then. What they called it was adult onset diabetes, because what happened was that most people that got type 2 diabetes were older people who generally had weight issues and had alcohol issues. And that would cause this, the type 2, bad eating.
If you don't mind for the viewers,
I'm sorry?
If you don't mind for the viewers,
Yeah.
to give you just a brief distinction of type 1 and type 2.
Okay. Well, type 1 diabetes is a genetic issue. You're not producing insulin. All right. And so, or you can be overproducing, but that's very rare. It's mostly you're not producing enough insulin. And so you have to take insulin to
For life.
Yeah, for life. It's a type 2 diabetes is 100% preventable. Now, I get frustrated when people go, well, we have diabetes that run in our family. If it ain't type 1 diabetes, then what runs in your family is bad eating habits. That's what's running in your
For
family.
the most part, most diseases.
Absolutely, the most part. Type 2 diabetes is 100% preventable.
Mhm.
All right. Now, you may have a certain genetic propensity to not produce insulin and stuff like that, but actual type 2 diabetes is not, that's something you do to yourself.
Mhm.
And so it's bad eating, too much alcohol, things like that, and obesity is one of the top, things. And of course, there's a huge problem in America with obesity. So, it's almost anybody anybody who's obese more than 10 years is going to develop, they're at the very bottom, they're going to develop metabolic syndrome, which is pre-diabetes.
Mhm.
But everyone's
There's the insulin resistance.
yeah, it's a start of insulin resistance. Yeah. And then mostly they'll develop into it if they don't do something about that.
Yep.
But it's also reversible. It's not easy, but you can reverse it. It takes some dedication, but you can do it. And so my study was showing that like before 1980, the amount of children having diabetes was like next to zero. Again, they didn't even call it type 2 diabetes. They called it adult onset diabetes. Then younger adults started getting it. Then the term type 2 diabetes came along.
Mhm.
And then people were getting that. And then metabolic syndrome came along. And then juvenile diabetes came along because all of a sudden we have 12-year-olds, and actually younger now, but 12-year-olds with diabetes.
Yeah.
That was totally unheard of. My generation, I cannot remember a single kid that had type 2 diabetes when I was a kid. Okay. There was a girl and a guy that I went to school with, one in Plano when I was going to school there, and one in Richardson that had type 1, right? That's it. That's the only guys we have. And again, that's a genetic issue that,
People were in much better shape back then too.
I'm sorry?
People were in much better shape.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot more. Yeah.
More
Let's put it this way.
activity, more.
Yeah.
Nowadays, video games, computers, and stuff.
We used to walk the mall. At the very least we would do is go flirt with the girls at the mall. That was the laziest day that we would have. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot. It's like this. Like I was in Japan. I took my family to Japan last week. That's why we couldn't do it, or the week before last. And we literally walked, and I'm not talking like we were like this. We walked over, like my older son has the thing. We walked over 15,000 steps every day. And it wasn't like, this is a vacation. It wasn't like we were doing this to work out, but it's just common that they walk there. First of all, their food is much better there. All right. Same in Europe. And they walk everywhere. We don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore. We literally can call the grocery store. They will get all the stuff and either put it in a little thing that you pull up and they put it in your car, or Uber Eats that delivers it to you.
You're mentioning that. I have a Sprouts, couple Sprouts, one near my office and the other one near my house. So I love when I buy my steak, I buy on the day that I cook. So I'll probably stop by on the way back home after I get done tonight, buy my steak, I grill it, or I just use the cast iron.
Yeah.
Everything fresh. I know I'm from Brazil. I know how to pick fruits. So I like to go there and physically pick
Touch the fruits,
that I want to eat. Because the DoorDash guy,
You know,
whatever he's bringing is never hits the mark, in my opinion. But nothing against DoorDash. But I agree with you. Everything's convenience based.
yes.
And I think too, guy, is like the time. People nowadays, they get so busy with everything. And I feel a lot of times, for instance, I like to sit down. Sometimes I come here when I'm not doing the podcast, not to do anything other than sit down here and be by myself and just kind of write some things down, think about what I'm doing, sometimes have some conversations with some people, and having those moments in between keeps my mind clear.
Yeah.
So when I actually go do business, I can produce without feeling I'm pressed or forced or worn out. The worst thing for me is talk to somebody when I don't have the energy. So I kind of work. I have a gravity-free lounge chair that I take a power nap.
Yeah.
20, 30 minutes whenever I need to.
Studies show
Yeah.
studies show that that napping is. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like.
You need to shut down your brain
So like
sometimes.
my company it's called Dynamus. Well, it's Dynamus Medical Partners.
I want to talk about that more. Okay, so talk about your business now, like what you do, what kind of patients you see. I know what you can say in regards to medicine. Please don't say anything that's going to get you in trouble. But I'm a believer in holistic approach because Carlos Gracie Sr., my uncle, he was a holistic doctor that didn't have a paper, a diploma, but all his life was about healing. That's where he made a lot of his money once he actually decided to retire. And I want to know more about that. Yeah. So tell me a bit about it. So you have a practice.
Yeah. So I'm involved in a practice.
And what's the name of it?
It's called Dynamus. Well, the website is Dynamus Online.
Dynamus Online.
Yeah. It's DYNAMIS online.com. Dynamus Medical Group. We don't do a lot of heavy lifting. It's not like I'm curing cancer or anything like that. But what we do is
preventative.
Yeah. Natural medicine is better at being preventative oriented versus being reactive oriented. Now, allopathic medicine is very good at reactive medicine. You break your arm, you don't want to come to me. Okay. Right. Yeah. Right. You want to go to the emergency room.
Now, is it mainly online resource or you have a physical space that you see people?
So both. And so, but we see most 90% of our clientele, 95% of our clientele is online.
Is that telehealth?
Yeah, telehealth. Yeah.
Okay.
They relaxed. When I first started doing this, I was doing it for the vets, and it was very expensive to do because of the HIPAA requirement. HIPAA's short. Okay, it's short for basically privacy stuff. Yeah, it's basically your privacy on stuff. So it basically it should keep me like, because I'm HIPAA bound. It's like I couldn't talk about certain patients' stuff, even if you knew them, right? Unless they gave me permission, right? And that's basically what it is. And so it keeps you. So because of HIPAA rules, the telemedicine was very difficult to do. But because of COVID, and because, to be honest, we're not doing a very good job in our medicine. Our country is, I don't care where you stand. The fact that we're closing down all these rural hospitals is going to be a disaster for people because they, the problem is we're capable. We don't listen. The father of modern medicine is a man named Hippocrates. Okay. Yep. All right. Now, if people aren't familiar with him, he was a physician in 500 BC. Okay. He was a Greek physician, and the Hippocratic Oath is named after him, and basically is to do no harm. All right. That's what all health professionals that have licensing, they take that oath. All right. And he basically said the three things that you need to have to be healthy is regular sleep, good food, and exercise. Oh my gosh. What a profound thing.
How complicated.
How complicated is that, right? But we make it complicated, all right? Now, we should listen to this guy because he was a badass. He performed successful brain surgery at 500 BC.
I can't imagine that.
I couldn't imagine it either. I mean, I'm thinking I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure how that even looks. I can't even imagine what it looked like, but he ended up doing this. So here's a guy we should probably listen to. Okay. All right. And he also tells the only thing that heals the body is the body itself. And it's truth. Anything that is actually going to fix, any medicines that actually fix the problem, not the symptoms, but the problem, is something the body does for itself. Like, okay, so antibiotics does fix the problem. It kills the bacteria that's in your body, that's making you sick. Okay. So antibiotics does work, but your body has antibiotics. All right. Now, generally the fact is that it's overwhelmed, and, because of various reasons. It could be because the disease is very powerful, or the fact that you're not very healthy and you have very low immune system. So you're not going to have very, many natural antibiotics. So that's why you need antibiotics. Okay. But antibiotics reenact something your body does for itself. And there's a few medicines that do that. But most allopathic medicine. Allopathic is just a fancy term for medical medicines, right? Allopathic medicine, by and large, fixes symptoms. Now,
Yeah.
there's sometimes that's important. I get it. And the reason being is that what I found, now, I wouldn't say most people, but I would say like the people who come to us are tending to be one or two people. They're either health enthusiasts who really want to stay up on the stuff, okay? Or they're 50 years old. They realize they got this bad health check. I have this gut on me. I'm lethargic. I can't think straight. My sex drive is down. And they think I got to do something about it. Okay. Now, the people who I love both of them that are open-minded enough to listen to what we have to say.
Yeah.
The problem I have with the health enthusiasts is they tend to have an idea of what they do because they know it all, and they tend to have very wrong information. They tend to get information from fitness enthusiasts, believe me, I had a ChatGPT guy, and I go, you got that from ChatGPT because he wanted a ridiculous amount of hormones. Like he wanted to have like literally twice as much testosterone prescribed to him that I would twice as much as the very maximum I'd ever give somebody, right? You know what I mean? Ever. He wanted twice as much, and then he wanted another medication that he wanted twice as much for that I wouldn't even give like a fourth of what he wanted to a patient. And I'm like going, and I knew where he got it from because I check all these things with Jet because I had these people coming to me and they're like, well, I understand this. I go, where'd you get that? Well, ChatGPT. So I went in and I put in there. And so this guy wanted this. I go, you got that from ChatGPT? No, I've been doing some of my studying. No, you didn't. You studied on ChatGPT because I asked the ChatGPT and it came with the exact same thing. What you did not ask ChatGPT is where you got that information, where they got that information. They got that information from Elite Physique, who they're not doctors. They're not even medical scientists. Okay. What they are is health enthusiasts. They're health influencers. And the amount of drugs that he's offering you, not a single doctor who wants to keep his license would give you that.
Mm.
So, but this is what we deal with, right? We deal with like this kind of stuff. So, I mean, our ideal patient is a patient who's going to listen, who's open to what they're doing, and is willing to do the basics. You got to eat well. You got to work out. You got to get some sleep. And then.
So it's like a lifestyle.
Yes, it's more lifestyle oriented
approach.
Yes.
Do you provide besides, I guess you have an assessment.
Yeah. Mostly blood work. Yeah. Mostly blood work. Blood work is going to be your best.
Yeah.
Your best assessment.
And then, the measures, your weight, whatever, BMI, whatever it is.
I'm not a big fan of the BMI.
Yeah, I'm not either.
The problem with the BMI is I'm considered obese because at 6'1", they said I should weigh 189 pounds. Well, I weigh
a lot of muscle.
Yes.
There, so.
I weigh 210 pounds and I'm probably
you should weigh?
189.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I haven't weighed 189 pounds since I was 19 years old. So, like good luck with that one. And obviously I'm not obese, but so the BMI is not horribly accurate, but, there are measurements that we want to look like, obviously, body fat ratio is going to be a huge one. Right. Cholesterol levels, they're not as quite a big a factor in your health as they considered it was at one point or another. It is a super important part.
Well, they say that they keep dropping so they can sell more statin.
Yeah. I mean, there's
now they say 180 should be the max, and I'm like thinking,
no, 200. Yeah, you should be on the high range of normal.
Yeah,
So your LDL, like your VLDL, okay. So your VLDL, as long as it stays under 50, 60. You're okay. Yeah. Your HDL, you want that at about 65, and your LDL, you want that around like 100. Like, so if you're below 200, and the ratio is not, as long as your LDL is not like, 150, and this, that would be, and most of the stuff you can be affected by lifestyle change without having to go on medicine. 100%. Now, there's a few genetic issues that certain people have that you do have to go on statins, but again, that's few and far between.
So for a typical prospect client of yours, what was the main reason? It could be a variety, but what's the main reason they look for your service?
Main reason is that well we are 60 we're 64 36 women, so we're 64% men, 36% women. Now the women come mainly for weight loss stuff,
Okay.
and so they're big on the GPL ones, which at first I was not a big fan of GPL ones. And if you don't have to be on them,
Was that Ozempic?
Yeah, Ozempic is like
Okay,
that.
okay.
Now they have different genera. Now they have GPL-3s and stuff like this, which hits 3 levels of it. And what actually makes them better for you, and they're not a bad idea for certain people to take on very low a dose amount, because it does curb it curbs your appetite and stuff, but it has massively great things on reducing inflammation, making you it's very good at restoring youthful insulin sensitivity. It's very good for lowering inflammation, especially in your brain, which is huge, because one of the main factors in age-related dementia is inflammation in the brain. And it's very difficult to get things past the blood-brain barrier, right? Because it protects your brain from, bad stuff getting in there. So it's difficult to get in there, but the GPLs get in there, and it's very beneficial for it. And then of course, if someone has some real obesity issues, then it's going to be beneficial for losing weight. The problem is most people doing the GPL-1s is that they don't do them right. Like, first of all, they lose weight, but they generally lose as much muscle as they do fat. Why? Because they're not feeding the muscle. You need to definitely focus on protein. You need to take an essential amino acid product. Essential, just so you guys, I'm going to give you a quick biology lesson here, nutritional lesson. Okay, so all your proteins have some kind of your essential amino acids. Now, when it's called a complete protein, that means it has all 9 of your essential amino acids. Essential amino acids mean that you cannot get this, your body doesn't make them. You have to get them from the outside source, which is food. Now, your best, the guys will argue with me. All the vegetarians and vegans out there are going to argue with me on this, but I'm not wrong. I'm actually quoting science, not things like this, is that very few vegan or vegetable proteins have all 9 essential amino acids. Well, almost every animal protein does. In fact, I can't think of a single animal protein who doesn't.
Well, I had a steak before I came here.
Yeah, steak is real good for you. Again, it's where you get your steak. You're getting it at Sprouts. It's most likely grass fed. Yeah, it's going to be grass fed, hormone free, and that's going to be good. Where steak becomes a problem is industrial steak, is where it has all the hormones. It has
like everything else. When it gets industrial,
industrialized, it screws everything up.
So you have 36% women, 64% man. Well, for a guy usually there, what are they looking after?
Mainly because they've gotten older and they've lost a step. They're fatigued a lot of times. They have libido issues, generally some kind of obesity issues, sometimes strength issues.
So you do a lot of hormonal panels?
You do hormone, yeah. I mean, the first thing that you have to do at some point or another is you get, it's at any age, but definitely as you get older, because that's when your hormones fluctuate. You have to have good hormones. People don't realize, like, people go, well, I don't need, yes, you do. You absolutely do. Now, you can live without having them, but your quality of life sucks.
Quality of life,
yeah. And so, so you need it. And it's going to make your life better. And so there's 3 levels in which we do that on. Okay. Now, if you're younger and athletic and I really feel like you can do this, there are a very good natural ways to raise your testosterone and we focus. I mean, we work on balancing all the hormones, but generally speaking, the one that most guys are going to be looking at is testosterone. And so just for easy explanation, well, let's just use testosterone as the main hormone thing. So there are some really great ways to naturally raise your testosterone levels. Obviously exercise raises your testosterone levels. And there's a bunch of nutritional things that do this, and there's supplements which again come from natural sources, which will help raise your testosterone. But you got to, it's work, and so so they have to do it. And then the next level is what we call allopathic assist, which we use allopathic medicines that help raise your, well, let's just say with testosterone, help raise your testosterone, but doesn't shut down your testosterone. It's not testosterone, but what it does, it helps your body produce more testosterone. And that's where a good chunk of our patients fall into. And then, and again, you still have to do more work. You have to exercise a little bit more because, you have to eat better. You have to do something because you have to create the environment. I mean, the medicine's going to help raise the testosterone levels. You also have to help create the environment for that, right? So you have to be clean.
And maintain as well the lifestyle.
Yes. And so, and then there's full allopathic, which would be like testosterone replacement. Now, some guys, again, there's a certain amount of taboo with that with certain people, but it really is going to be an essential part of your health. All right. If you're not producing what's going on, I mean, like a prime example would be like if I were testing you, and then let's say, and just offset that you were low on your testosterone. Now I go, because you're 62, I go, all right, being natural is going to be a little bit more of a test.
What will be your guess?
Yeah. So I would say, it would be hard. I mean, I'd have to look. I mean, you look like you did. So I would probably say that you are, I don't know if you're on testosterone or not, but.
No, I'm not yet.
Yeah. So what I would say is you're probably close to about a 500, and a free testosterone, probably about 15, just because you're able to do what you're doing.
780.
Huh?
780.
What's your free?
15.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you need so what I would tell you to do is you need to free up. Okay. 780 is good, which is actually really good at 62. But that's not what's getting in your system.
Yeah, it's the free one.
It's the free. And so really.
It goes from what? 12 to 21? What's the range?
Oh, no. I mean, it can
fluctuate.
Yeah, it can fluctuate from anywhere from
15
0
or 16.
Yeah. So what you want a bit, ideally what you want is like for maximum level is 30. But like for you, if you got 3% of your deal, so you're like 780, so that's close to 800. So if you were at 24, you're performing better. All right. That's where you should be. And so, I can tell you, I don't know, there's some natural things you can do, that would do it. There's a product called, Libido Stem M. I'll tell you how to get it afterwards.
You're going to hook me up?
Yeah.
Okay, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
And so
say the name again of your company.
Dynamus Online.
Dynamus Online.
Online.com.
Hey guys, dynamusonline.com.
Yeah, I'll get it. It's a good product, 100% natural. It'll help. What it'll do is, it basically, controls your estrogen. It helps turn your estrogen in. Okay, estrogen is actually kind of a broad term. There's actually 26 different types of estrogen in the human. We measure 3 of them because the 3 are the strongest one. And mostly what we do is measure estradiol, which is the strongest, and can be potentially, it's good and bad. In the right ratios, it's very good for you. In the wrong ratios, it's very bad for you. In fact, most estrogen-related cancer in women come from estradiol, too high of estradiol. And for men, certain prostate issues come from high estradiol. And so there's a thing called DIM, which DIM helps regulate the process because testosterone turns into estrogen. That's how, like in a perfect world, what happens is you're young, you're strong, your body produces testosterone because I'm working out all the time like this, and it gets to a certain level that your body doesn't need anymore. And the process is called aromatase, and it aromatizes into estrogen, and that sends a signal back up to your pituitary not to make any more testosterone. Now, the problem with what's happening in America is that we have all this estrogen mimicking stuff in our soaps, our foods, all sorts of shit like this. Fabric cleaner, our laundry detergents, and like this. And so it's artificially telling our brain not to make any more testosterone. So, and so that cuts down on things. That's probably not your problem because you're at 780. So that's probably not your problem. But it also takes estradiol, DIM does, and it turns into the microbiome of, so one of the other major things is called estrogen. Estrogen is actually more beneficial for the microbiome of it. Isn't harmful to especially men, but it's not harmful to women either. Even if they have estrogen-based cancer, it doesn't activate it. And so DIM actually turns estradiol into the microbiome of the estrogen. big long name, so you guys don't need to know it. Just know that it turns into a microbiome that's much healthier for you. So that's going to benefit you on there on prostate issues, for you. And also it has in it things that suppress a thing called sexual hormone binding globulin. Sexual hormone binding globulin is a protein that attaches to your testosterone. And you got to think about testosterone. Testosterone is really a key, and it fits into a lock, which is your receptor, and it turns on a reaction, which is energetic and anabolic response. Okay. All right. And so that's how you get the benefits from testosterone. So, but if you have this key and it has mud on it, you can't get in the key, into the lock. And so sexual hormone binding globulin is that mud. And so there are ingredients inside this libidostem M that attach to the same receptors that sexual hormone binding globulin does, so it won't interfere with it. So it'll raise your free testosterone. So what we want to look at you at 780, if we can get 21 to 24 instead of the 15, you'll have remarkably better functioning. You be a noticeable difference in your life. And if we could raise it up to that, and libido stem will probably do that. And that's I can give you that. That's an easy one. I'll show you how to get that. That's an easy one to do, and that'll improve it too. Like I said, it has other things that help keep your testosterone producing. So that's actually really good. If you're at 780, that's phenomenal.
Well, Mr. Mezger, we're filling the cup here, but I'm telling you what, after I started talking to you, we're going to have a part 2.
Okay.
We're going to have a part 2. Is there any closing statements you'd like to make out of this conversation? First of all, on my end here, I'm so grateful for the fact, first, that I met you, that I got to share some time with you. It has been a long gap since I saw you last. I'm so happy for you that you have a new career path, not that you're not involved with the martial arts, but you have your other... for me, I see that as an example because I'm in that threshold where I still teach. I love teaching, but I do other things. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's that juggle. But I know at one point in time, you have to reinvent yourself, I believe. And
you can't limit yourself.
Yeah.
One of the kind of the hallmarks of martial art practice, which tends to be just lip service by most people, is martial arts helps you to get the confidence and the ability to do anything you want in life. No, it does. Just anything that you dedicate that puts you through. Let's face it, the level of that you did jiu-jitsu, the level that I did, my jiu-jitsu, my martial art practice, at a level that most people will never understand. Okay. And it's not a cut down to people. They just don't get it. It's like the guy, you probably get 100 guys in here coming, I'm ready to be the next UFC champion. And, you're like, yeah, that ain't going to happen. All right. And it just is not gonna, right. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing, right. But what I would say, like, I too am super grateful. I mean, you were my first introduction. I mean, you were actually my very first jiu-jitsu instructor. The guys who helped me out were your black belts, your very first black belts. In fact, I earned my black belt under Travis Luter, who is a great honor. Travis is one of the best human beings I know, let alone one of the best martial artists that I've ever known. And he truly is. It's just, he is truly a humble guy. Truly is a humble guy. He's a great family man. He has this incredible family, has this incredible business, teaching what he does. And, I'm just like very, very proud that he's my friend. And of course, Kenny, Kenny is the chess master of jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? And they were two very influential guys in my development, and it started with you, and I'm very grateful for that. I don't know if I'm sure. I generally don't talk a huge amount of martial arts outside of a certain circle of people, just because I just don't want to get into the conversation with people that just don't know what they're talking about, because it just hurts my brain. But anybody in the real know would definitely, you are the father of Texas jiu-jitsu, you know, without a doubt. Everybody that your black belts are the black belts out there that are still doing it right. You know, the problem with jiu-jitsu, it's the same thing that happened to karate. Karate was, when karate first came out, not everybody did karate because it was difficult, because people got hurt. All right. And nobody wants to get hurt on a regular basis. It took a few crazy people, you know, because again, it wasn't a job back then. It was an activity. How many people want to go to work all day, then come in and get beat up and do, you know, like old school karate? That's what it was. Alan Steen told me about, like, when he first started karate, Jun Rhee, who is the father of Taekwondo, he died recently. Well, I guess not that recent, about 10 years now, but he went to University of Texas. He was actually in the Korean military. He went to University of Texas to study engineering. And he was asked to teach a stretching class to the football players. And they were all being disrespectful to him. And he sidekicked one of them in the head, knocked him out. And then they suddenly got real respectful, which it's amazing how that works. And but then they started wanting to do martial arts. And so he started doing martial arts, and he had 300 people show up for martial arts. Within 2 months, there was 3 people, Alan Steen being one of them. All right. Because that's how tough it was back then. And it bred tough guys. It did. You know, the average green belt in Texas in the 60s and 70s could fight the average professional boxer. And, you know, it'd be a 50-50 win. The average black belt in karate today with 10 years of black belt experience couldn't beat an amateur boxer with less than 10 boxing experience, within 10 boxing fights, you know, because of the success of it. And so what ended up being, when it turned commercial, some of these guys sold their souls. And guys who shouldn't be black belts got black belts. And that's the same kind of thing that's happened in jiu-jitsu. I see guys out there like this. I see them roll, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's a pretty good blue belt. Oh, he's a black belt. I'm like, what? You know, and because, you know, and the one thing that I admire about you, and I admire about your students, you know, your direct students that I know of, every single one of them keeps the integrity of jiu-jitsu, which to me was the last bastion of real traditional martial arts, meaning like the whole belt system and stuff like that. Because it was, I mean, you had guys literally going for 3 years that were still blue belts. I mean, who does that? You know, I mean, you're lucky to see somebody 6 months now in some of these schools, and they get their blue belt. Like, this one kid actually came to me. His dad's an old school karate guy I've known for years and years, have a lot of respect for. And he wants to do MMA. And I said, oh, how much jiu-jitsu you done? You know what I mean? Because I knew he'd be a good boxer, kickboxer kind of guy. And he goes, I'm a blue belt. And I was like, okay, do yourself a favor. Put a white belt on. I seen you roll. All right. And I don't want to be a jerk, but you want to fight. So I'm going to be real with you. You're not a blue belt. You're not a blue belt. That would be a blue belt at our school. You wouldn't be a blue belt in legitimate stuff. And I don't want to seem like a jerk. All right. And I know that he goes, no, he goes, I realized that when I started rolling with everybody here that I'm not at that level. I said, I think you get a little bit more respect if you put on that white belt. First of all, they'll be a little bit more willing to train you versus use you as, you know, a training partner. There's a difference, right?
Yeah.
And I go, not many guys are, and he did. And not many guys are going to do that. I have mad respect for that kid for doing that, because, you know, he went in and he realized, if I'm going to do this, you know, I can't
be honest with yourself.
Yeah, you got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And I would say, like I said, one of the things I respect mad about you is that, like I said, it was 3 years. Some of these guys would be blue belts for 3 years, and it was like crazy. And, you know, but they're also badasses. I mean, Travis is a badass. You know, Kenny is a badass. I mean, all your guys are huge skill, even if they don't have like the credentials in the sporting world, because, you know, it's only recently that it's been at the level that it's at. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, when we first started in the 90s, there wasn't, not really. I mean, they had a world championship, but let's face it, it wasn't what it is today. You know what I mean?
This episode is sponsored by Stay Humble Coffee. Coffee is so good, it doesn't need to brag. Find it at stayhumblecoffee.com.
That's, like I said, if I can give you some of the greatest praise, which sounds like this, is the fact that your integrity in keeping it at the level that it's at is I wouldn't expect anything else out of you. I'd actually be surprised if that wasn't you. But the fact that the fact that you do that is, again, is super important. Mm-hmm. It's super important that we do that like that, because again, I just think like martial arts saved my life. Like I said, like I tell you all the time, I was in a bad place. I told you 17 to 20, I managed to get in so much trouble. It was ridiculous. And the thing is, I ended up getting, with the old school black belt tests in those days, I did that. And I realized, man, if I could do that, I can do anything. I literally thought I was going to die on the damn test. I swear to God, they kept putting people on me. And I literally said, I'm going to die. And I remember going, I don't care. I mean, I was okay with it. And it's amazing the peace that comes over you when you surrender, that kind of thing. And I was like, and I realized, man, I didn't feel pain no more. I said, if I can do this, I can do anything. I mean, I really said that to myself. And that's when my life changed. So even though out of all I do, to make money, being a martial arts instructor is the least amount of where I make money, right? But it's something I will do a lot longer, probably than I enjoy being a doctor. So I'll probably be a doctor for a long time too. But I will definitely, I will definitely be doing that. My goal probably, my way to exit this world would be love to have a heart attack while I'm trying to armbar some guy, some 20-year-old guy, and I'm 90 years old and I have a heart attack on the mat. I know it'll probably freak everybody out, but this is the way I'd want to go.
No, man,
and
you're going to be okay.
Yeah. But I want people to go, like this. And so I'm a zealot when it comes to the practice of martial arts, because most people don't really practice martial arts. Mm-hmm. They practice martial dancing and all this other stuff. You have produced the best.
Thank you.
Black belts out there. I mean, without a doubt, there's nobody that would question that. And they in turn produced some of the best black belts out there too. So, your lineage and, here's the thing. Our immortality isn't going to be because you're a world champion jiu-jitsu practitioner. It's not going to be because I was a world champion guy or UFC, because that's going to fade. People don't know. Like, it's funny because every now and then some guy my age will be like with his kids and it'll be like, oh my gosh, Guy Mezger, I was a great fan of yours. And they'll go, you know who this is? Of course he doesn't know who he is, because I was retired from fighting before he was born, but that's beside the point. You know what I mean?
You know what happens to me sometimes, like when I'm at airports, because I guess people in the old days, they will remember me with more hair.
Yeah.
I still have hair, but it's thinner, so I'd rather just buzz. And
I'm about to do that myself.
But I wear a shirt sometimes, that has my logo, the name of my academy, whatever it is.
Yeah, sure.
And then jiu-jitsu guys, no jiu-jitsu guys. If you see a shirt, oh, you train with so-and-so, this and that. And then the guy comes, oh, you train with the Machados, this and that. And I don't say a thing.
Yeah.
I want to hear if the guy's going to talk crap first. See, let's see what this guy's going to say. Yeah, yeah. Oh, the Machado brothers. Yeah. And then I let the guy talk a little bit. Say, well, as a matter of fact, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
He was like, what? Yeah, I'm Carlos. Maybe you imagine
I'm the better looking one. I'm the best looking one.
Yeah.
Often people mistaken me.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe I had more hair before. Maybe I was bigger. You think I was bigger than what I am, but it's me.
Yeah.
Oh man, if you like, they get embarrassed. But it's kind of like I look at this as a brotherhood.
Yeah.
Because I feel remembering, and I don't know prolong this much more. I just want to kind of close with this note from what you're saying about life changing. But when I first came to America, Guy, my goal was not to come to Texas. I was in California for the first 5 years. And I didn't have a school. I was teaching in a garage mat in our double car garage out of a small house that we used to rent in Redondo Beach. It was not until I met Chuck Norris that he helped us establish our first school in Tarzana, California, in the suburbs of LA. And then 5 years later, he was already doing the Texas Ranger show. Remember when he first came to my mats? Sure. Remember he was at the studio, the TV studio and stuff?
The film studio.
When I look back, and it was just like, man, and I remember my first black belts like Luther, Tim Burrell, Clay Pittman, rest in peace, William Vandrick passed away, unfortunately, last March. But I had no idea where the wind was blowing. I just kind of was following somewhat of a path that was yet unclear to me. But as time goes by, the way I look at things is like when you're part of history, you're not aware of it because you're in the midst of it. It's only when you have the time to look back and figure out where things were and where things are.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm optimistic about the future because I try to be honest with my vision and my mission. But with that said, having met somebody like you, and I still have fond memories of Alex Andrade and Trey. I saw them last in the function in Fort Worth way back, you know, and it was great memories. I treasure these moments where we reminisce a little bit because I feel no matter what, time is so flimsy. You know, things happen so fast, things can change so fast that we don't appreciate what we have been through in life and the experiences that we have now. So I'm very eager to carry on more of this conversation at another time, more in a wellness conversation.
And I would love we can gear towards that. There's a lot of stuff, but I got to get you that stuff that I'll show you when we're off camera.
It's all good. So I want to close on this note. Thank you, Guy Mezger, for being you, for giving such a contribution to the martial arts, for changing the lives of so many and impacting so many, and for being gracious of your time and honest to your mission. And I know you're a doctor, but at heart, you're always a martial artist, and you're a martial artist first. So I'm at peace that will always stay with you.
You know, there's one thing too that I always say that, and this is how I always described guys like you and man. I go, being a martial artist, most people say they're martial artists, and they'll go, I've been a martial artist for 30 years. Really what they are is they've done 1 year of martial arts 30 times.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I go, here's the difference. I go, somebody who does martial arts, I go, most MMA fighters do martial arts. They're great athletes. They're not martial artists. There's a difference. Now, some of them are, you know, and the funny part is mostly the wrestlers, because wrestling is a martial art and you live, eat, and breathe wrestling. Wrestling is like you become a creature, like a werewolf or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's different. And so you really live it like that, you know? And so I go, the difference between someone who does martial arts and someone who is a martial artist is you could be a ferocious athlete. And I go, it's like putting on a water faucet. Now you might be so good that you can turn that water faucet on and tons of water comes out. But the moment you leave the gym or you step out of the ring, that water faucet turns off. I said, someone who is a martial artist turns that water faucet on and it may only be a drip to start with, but it never shuts off. I said, that's the difference. I said, being a martial artist isn't a summertime thing. It's an all the time thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you are an all the time thing. And like I said, having your praise, having you say nice things about me, it makes me feel good as a martial artist. Where most people who are martial arts guys who talk about me, I don't have that feeling. It's not like I don't not appreciate the fact they're complimentary of me. It's just I don't hold them in the same respect that I hold you with. And having someone like you, just like having someone like Travis and people of quality, having the respect of men, respectful men and good men is the highest compliment you can ever get. It doesn't matter how many awards you get, how many stuff like this. Having the respect of good men and respectful men is the highest compliment you can ever get. It's more than any gold medal you'll get, any blue ribbon you get, any amount of money you get.
Amen to that, my brother.
And I appreciate that.
You're very welcome, and I mean it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.